Welcome to, all right, welcome to NDIA's Digital Inclusion 101 webinar. We're so happy that you are here. Just some housekeeping before we begin. If you could all please put your name, your pronouns, and the organization that you're with on your Zoom name. That way, if you are participating with us through chat or off mic, that way we can refer to you properly and know where you're from. So to do that, you can just hover your mouse over your video. There's 3 buttons at the top that'll show up. You can click on that and then press rename. Go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. We are a huge community and we love if you can connect with each other and learn, from people in the room, and maybe you can find connections. All right, and before we begin, I also want to let you all know that the recording of this will be shared out today, as well as the slides that has a lot of resources for you. So I'll mention that a few times because I know that's a big question. All right, so let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right, can I get a thumbs up from somebody? Okay, awesome, just making sure. All right, so welcome to NDIA. Our Digital Inclusion 101 is our last one of the year. We do these bi-monthly, so every other month, as opposed to twice a month. Sometimes that gets confusing. So as you all know, there's a lot of new digital inclusion practitioners that are starting in this field. You might be some of them. And if you know anybody in the future that's joining your team or who's just new into this, have them come to our Digital Inclusion 101. Our next one will be in February. All right, so this is our agenda for today. We're going to introduce who NDIA is, then we'll talk about key digital inclusion definitions. We'll talk about understanding the barriers to digital inclusion, and then we'll provide key solutions. And then we'll talk about our Digital Navigator program, digital inclusion coalitions, because you are not alone in your work. And then we'll talk about policy and what joining the NDIA community would provide you if you're not part of it already. And these are the presenters for today. I'll go ahead and introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to my 2 other teammates. So hi everybody, I am Pamela Rosales, pronouns she, hers. I reside in Chicago, Illinois, and I am the Training and Community Engagement Manager. So I do the Digital Inclusion 101s. I also welcome our new community members of over 1,000 affiliates, which we'll talk more about. And then I also do a lot of like community call coordinating and things like that. I will pass it over to Lo to introduce themselves.
Hey y'all, my name's Lo Smith. My pronouns are they, them. I am a senior programs manager here at NDIA. You may recognize me from hanging out with our Digital Navigators program, popping up in various calls and places to chat about digital skills and really solutions to the digital divide. And I believe, I'm not sure if my coworker Sion has arrived yet. The joy of having friends in the policy side of things is they are busy. So if Sion is not here yet, you will hear from her a little bit later. So don't worry.
Yes, we will have a Q&A portion at the end. So if you do have any policy questions or any program questions, please save it for that, or you can type it in the chat and we'll take note of that. All right, so NDIA, who are we? What do these letters mean? So NDIA stands for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and we advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. And we are a nonprofit representing and serving over 1,000 affiliates. We actually reached 1,000 affiliates last month, which is such an exciting thing because at the start of this year, we were at about 500. So welcome to the community for those who started and joined us. It's a really exciting time to be part of the digital inclusion movement with all of this funding that's coming in, all of these new positions. So you're really joining us at a great time. I also want to acknowledge that we have 12 tribal entities as partners, and they are doing amazing work and bringing digital inclusion into their community. And we are also very much happy to be a partner with them. And we're very much privileged in working alongside these tribal-led organizations. So here at NDIA, we facilitate knowledge sharing forums, such as our monthly community calls, which our next community call is coming up tomorrow. So please join us, sign up with NDIA. join that community call. It's a really packed agenda, so it's going to be fun. We also have working group meetings. We have our very thriving, robust NDIA listserv. And so what we do is we listen to our community through these forums, and then we create resources and toolkits and advocacy work based on the issues that we're seeing and hearing in our community. For example, something we recently launched is our state toolkit. Which we launched that I think last Monday, helping states in creating their digital equity plans. All right, so let's jump in and define some key terms. Sometimes these terms are used interchangeably, so it's nice to define what they each mean specifically. So digital equity, this is the goal, right? This is the work that we are doing. This is why we're doing the work. It's where everybody in our community can get connected online and do what they want to do online. So why are we focusing on digital equity? Why the word equity? And this image illustrates the difference between equality on the left, where everybody is getting the same exact resources, versus equity on the right, which I'm sure you've seen some type of image, some type of graphic kind of demonstrating this thing where, you know, they're looking at the needs of every single individual and adjusting the resources accordingly. So as you see in both pictures, there is 6 books, right? 6 books on the left, 6 books on the right. But on the left, when it comes to equality, you're just giving out the resources equally to all of the community members, not really listening to what their specific needs are, as opposed to equity on the right. You know, the tall girl does not have 3 books because she doesn't need it. But, you know, the smaller person does need more books. And now they're all kind of looking at the computer screen equally, right? That's what we mean by equity, is listening to your community, having authentic, real relationships with your community members so you can know what are those unique needs that they have. Is it fear about their documentation status? Is it limited English speaking and they need resources in their language? You know, all of those things that you get to learn when you're having those outreach events with your community. You're going to learn all of those things and then adjust those resources accordingly. All right. And so digital inclusion, it's the work, it's how the work gets done. It's those activities that are necessary to achieve digital equity. And so it's the work that you're all doing. And we're going to go into detail in the next few slides of what these specific activities look like. And then digital divide, the issue. If you have listened to or attended many conferences, you have heard the phrase bridging the digital divide. I am over that phrase, but essentially it's those who have the access to, you know, go online that gap between those who are able to go online, have the digital skills to operate online in the way that they want to, and have the device necessary for them to use the internet accordingly, and those who do not have those resources. All right, so here at NDIA, we love Jamboard, and we're going to use that today. There is a limit of how many people can join Jamboard, and currently we're at 50 participants, so the limit is actually 50. So maybe one or two of you might not be able to access Jamboard. If that's the case, then you can just put your participation answers on the chat, and then you can still participate that way. But what Jamboard is, it's a virtual whiteboard. And so to add a sticky note, you're going to click on the 4th module on the left, 4th icon on the left module. And that way a sticky note will pop up. You can write whatever you want. You can put unlimited sticky notes and then press save. So I believe the Jamboard link is in the chat already. And I want you all to reflect and answer this question. What prevents people in your community from consistently connecting to the internet and using it effectively? And while you do that, I'm going to share the Jamboard on my screen so we can all see it. Oh, you can't find the link. Okay, let me put the link again. All right, I've put the link in the chat. Go ahead and click there. All right, I see all the little animal icons. So thank you. Joanna wrote affordability. Diane wrote bandwidth, cost, educational barriers, language barriers. Yes. Yes and yes. Somebody, oh, we've got a lot of people. Poor service by ISPs. So ISPs are internet service providers. Lack of awareness. Absolutely. It can be from a lot of things. Lack of awareness that community programs exist where you don't necessarily have to buy your own device to get connected, right? There's programs out there where you can go to like the library and get connected. They might not know that. Or they think that they have to have their own device first before learning digital skills. But did you have to learn how to drive after you bought the car? Or did you learn how to drive before you buy the car? And things like that, right? So it's a matter of not being aware that, you know, there are community programs out there for you. Cost, affordability is a big one, especially, you know, on all fronts. So cost when it comes to your internet connection. It's expensive to start up a new service if you move to a new place. And same thing with the monthly costs, and people, again, with a lack of awareness of knowing that there are programs out there where you can reduce the cost of your internet bill. Not having digital skills, yes. And then, you know, sometimes people might think that that's kind of it because they don't have digital skills right now, that it's not something that they can build. And there might be a lot of shame in wanting to learn that. Lack of digital navigators. Yes, thank you for whoever wrote that. We will talk about the digital navigator program later on in the presentation. Somebody wrote ISP near monopoly. Yes, if there's no choices and then your only option is this big internet service provider that has poor customer service, poor quality, then that's going to be a huge barrier. Somebody wrote lack of sufficient equipment. Unfortunately, many small and rural public libraries also experience the same issue. Yes, thank you for whoever wrote that. Fear of tech. Thank you for somebody for identifying that, because fear and shame, it drives a lot of people's actions, right? And somebody might think, okay, well, if I see these big companies and their data is getting hacked, like T-Mobile, you know, their user information got hacked, and other big agencies, then what about me, right? I'm just this, you know, person who lives in this area, like then my information can get hacked. I don't want that out there. And then that fear, if that fear can grow of, well, if I'm scared of that, then what's the point of learning digital skills if I'm going to get my information compromised? There is ways to navigate the internet in a safe way, right? Just like driving, just like anything, the risks are always there. But it's about like teaching our community members what are the benefits of the internet, and kind of validating those fears too, not gaslighting them and saying like, oh, that's not going to happen. We can't guarantee that nobody will get hacked, but it's just about relating to them in that human way of saying, yes, I hear you. I see that with my family members. I had those fears as well, but here's how we can navigate that. Y'all are on this Jamboard right now. I love it. Okay. Somebody wrote language barriers. Yes. If you are limited English speaking, or there is that language barrier there, it's going to be really difficult to find the resources that you need. Especially if, you know, you go to these community resource centers and they don't have the somebody in staff that speaks the same language as you, that can be a barrier as well. All right. And I'm seeing a lot of affordability here. I'm seeing something about devices. School issued devices are not sufficient. Yes, and also when it comes to devices, we have to look at the needs of the user. If it's a Google Chrome, those have different permissions, and you're able to do things. There's some things that you're not able to do with a Google Chrome, like download like a Word or Excel or things like that, or some specific programs or software that you would need like a regular laptop for, and you might not know that. All right, I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for participating in this. I'm gonna go back into the regular slides, but y'all seem to have a really great understanding of the issues that your communities are facing and why it's difficult for them to get connected. You know, I'm seeing things like devices, affordability, internet connection, digital skills, as well as fear and shame. So let me pause my screen and I'll go back to our slides. All right. Okay. So now kind of talking about the barriers to digital inclusion, one of them, and somebody had mentioned about ISPs, is digital redlining. So digital redlining, it's the discrimination by internet service providers in the deployment, maintenance, upgrade, or infrastructure or delivery of services. And so the image on the right, we did a redlining analysis in Cleveland in 2017, and through that analysis, we had learned that AT&T systemically discriminated against lower income Cleveland neighborhoods in its deployment of internet and home video technologies. So you see the green is where AT&T made those upgrades, and then the red area is where the low income communities are. And so as you see, there's no overlap there. And we'll talk more, some more barriers to digital inclusion before I pass it over to Lo. So we kind of breaking it up into these three different buckets, but there is much more. But these are kind of the three basic barriers that we're seeing. So with broadband, it being unaffordable, like we said, costs to start up a service, costs to maintain the monthly internet. And just because you're paying more doesn't necessarily mean you're getting better service. Oftentimes, you might actually be paying more for worse service. Having unreliable service as well is the way you're getting connected to the internet, is the technology where the internet is faulty. It goes out when the weather is bad, when it's raining or there's a thunderstorm or snowing, or conditions where it's not just sunny. Digital redlining that we discussed, and also it could be complicated by land ownership rights on tribal lands. When it comes to barriers with owning devices, again, it being unaffordable, devices can get really expensive. People might not know that, again, there are programs out there that can provide a discount to devices. And because they don't know that, they might look at a tablet and see, oh my gosh, this thing is so expensive. Maybe I can just get that versus getting a phone or a laptop. But then psych, they get the tablet, they put the money in there, and they realize they can't make a phone call unless they have that additional, phone subscription on there. So lack of awareness and lack of knowing that different devices have different needs. Having an outdated software. Before working with NDIA, I worked at domestic violence shelters, especially when the pandemic hit. And this was a thing that we were seeing a lot with our clients of, okay, they didn't have to use their laptops because they would always just call to make an appointment. But because their court hearings went in person, where their court hearings are no longer in person and went virtual, everybody had to get their laptops out. And it's, oh, do you have the updated software that would allow for you to use Zoom? We had people where their laptops didn't have a webcam. That's how old it was, right? And so how do you connect to the social services that you need if you have an outdated software? Another one is not having access to devices or not knowing about the community programs that could provide you access. There are programs out there where you do a training class and then you get a free device. Those exist. Community members might not know that. And then lastly, device is not matching the needs of a user. And then the last key barrier that we'll focus on is those digital skills. So somebody might not have, or their digital skills are very limited. Trainings are not accessible. They might not be accessible for people with disabilities. They might not be accessible for low income folks or for people who are working outside of the 9 to 5. And they might not be in different languages that the community members need. Fear and shame that we talked about of, wow, I really should be knowing this by now. I feel stupid asking these basic questions, especially if somebody who is older and they're seeing younger folks who are kind of navigating the internet quicker than them. There might be some fear and shame there, as well as privacy concerns. that we talked about. I also saw that when working prior to NDIA of the clients of, I don't want to use the internet. I don't want to get online because what if they're going to stalk me? They keep finding me in these places. But there is a way to use the internet the way that you need to and protect yourself. For example, they didn't know that those apps that they were using, their location services were on automatically. They didn't know that. So it's about turning those location services on, not checking in the restaurants that you are going out with and your friends. Don't put that on Facebook. There's ways to protect yourself and still kind of enjoy, the benefits of the internet and your life, right? Erica asks in the chat, will slides be sent? Yes, the slides will be sent. The recording will be sent as well. All right, so passing it over to Lo, and they will talk about the solutions.
I love that Pamela kicks us off with like all of the like, here are all the problems, here's what's going on. And then it's like, all right, Lo, fix it. And I'm like, well, let's all try together. Good news is it's not my responsibility to fix all of it. So we're going to go through 3 solutions. We're going to talk about affordable and low cost broadband. We're going to talk about those appropriate devices, and we're going to talk about digital skills trainings. So let's get started on the next slide with affordable and low cost broadband. I want to take a minute to talk about that language. On the last slide, I know we just said affordable broadband. It's because we only had so much space in those slider bars back in the day when we tried to name what we were doing. We talk about affordable and low cost broadband because these are similar but fundamentally different things. What is affordable to one person is not necessarily affordable to everyone, but we can all agree on what low cost broadband is. That's why we've updated to this language. I think about this when it comes to coffee a lot. If you've attended any of these previous DI 101s or anything with me and Pamela, or if you've seen us at Net Inclusion or you plan to see us in San Antonio, you will know the 2 of us love coffee almost more than we love digital inclusion, which is hard. And for us, an affordable coffee really depends day to day. How much did I spend on Starbucks yesterday? How much caffeine do I need? Is today a whipped cream day or not? Where a low cost coffee for both of us is always just going to be bare minimum, black coffee, put some oat milk in it, throw some lavender syrup in it, let's go. No latte needed. So it's about thinking about what is the baseline of what we can all agree on is low cost, basic, easy, affordable for every day, and affordable. How does this fit into the budget and needs of that community member? That's why we've got this sort of much longer title going on for our solution. Let's talk about what broadband actually is on the next slide. What is this? I know we're all here together. Oh, I see that oat milk shout out. Thank you, Adrian, one of mine. I love an oat milk person. So we're thinking about broadband. Broadband is the transmission of the wide bandwidth data over a high-speed internet connection, which is a really complicated way of saying that there is wire and information flowing through it. I think most of us probably have experience with broadband. And that is just a situation in which we are able to access internet and have for most of our lives. Back in the day with the Ethernet cables, or for those of you who are brave and fearless enough to tether yourselves to your modems every day for that better connection, you're better than me. But that's what we're thinking about when we're talking about broadband, that connection. Back in 2015, over 7 years ago, far too many iPhones and limited edition Starbucks drinks for me, we had the FCC decide that a minimum standard for broadband speed is 25 megabits per second for downloading and 3 megabits per second for uploading. And just thinking about those numbers and the things that we were doing back in the day in 2015, I find a bit disturbing. If we are still defining ourselves by the needs of 2015, I would have completely different needs, and I'm sure we all do too, whether it is life or internet. So let's try a trivia question on the next page to really see if we can figure out exactly what speed we should be having for our families. So we're going to take a look at a family of 4. I'm going to use my sister's family because they are a family of 4, I'm counting my nephew who's 11 months old, but still. They have 5 devices connected to the internet. We'll say the baby monitor is one of them. And they have 2 people working from home, my sister and her husband. They're working from home. And they're streaming videos in HD because that is the only way to watch the World Cup. What speed are we in need of for downloads for this family of 4? I want to see some guesses in the chat. See if anybody wants to guess. We've got some guesses for 100, 100, 100, 100 without buffering. Ooh, 100 plus. 200. I like that we are just like, we're throwing out the multiple choice. We don't trust that this is enough. Just a reminder that in the last slide, it said 25 megabits per second for that download. So now we're thinking that we're talking about a family of 4, 5 devices. I'm going to give the chat one more second to see if anybody wants to have a dissenting opinion. All right, Pamela, show us what our the big reveal is. It's 100 megabits per second. Just a confirmation from Pamela. Is this the first time that we have exclusively had correct answers for this trivia question?
Yeah, this is the first time everybody has gotten it right.
Do we retire now? Like, is that what we do? All right, y'all are in charge. Just kidding. Don't worry, we're not going to abandon you yet because we need to talk about broadband adoption. Y'all are right. It's 100 megabits per second. And I feel like I don't even need to talk about it too much because you get it. And you really understand that broadband adoption is not just like you have the modem, you have the connectivity, it's there in your house. It's about the speed and the quality and the capacity. Is it working for you? I have been trying to connect with a friend who's long distance, whose internet has been really off. I've been unable to have a video call with them for about 4 or 5 days. We're very close. And they're just like, yeah, it's really hard because my internet speeds are so far down. I haven't been able to show you this cool stuff I'm working on. It's also about having those digital skills necessary to participate online. If you aren't comfortable using the internet, what's the point of having internet in your home? And it's about having that device that is both secure, yours, and able to connect to your network. Once again, if you are stuck with internet that only works at a high speed and quality, if you're plugging in an Ethernet cable, there is nowhere to plug an Ethernet cable into your iPad or your smartphone. So it's not going to be effective for all of your needs that you may have each day. On our next slide, I do want to have a quick moment for tribal sovereignty and broadband, which is excellent. Tribal sovereignty and sovereign spectrum is really fantastic. Tribes are able to own and operate their own internet infrastructure, which is able to keep the power and data within tribal communities, bolster that economic power, and also maintain the sovereignty that is required and deserved. We always like to shout this out because our friends at ISLR have some really fantastic case studies on how tribes are expanding internet access, how that's able to impact internet adoption in communities. So even if you are not a tribal entity, no affiliation, I definitely recommend looking into this because it's a great way to learn about how we can build community power with regard to broadband. So quick little homework assignment for all of our friends here before we scoot on to another little trivia question about communities and about internet. So this is another one where if everybody is right this time, I think we might have to hand out a prize. But the trivia question is, what city was ranked the best city to work from home in 2021 by PC Magazine? Was it San Francisco, California? Was it New York City? Was it where Net Inclusion 2023 is going to be, San Antonio? Or is it Chattanooga, Tennessee? Happens to be home of Net Inclusion 2024. All right, I am seeing some very different answers in the chat, which is exciting. I am seeing an overwhelming number of answers for D, Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm also seeing a bunch of San Fran coming in. So I'm gonna give about 2 more seconds if anybody wants to throw one last answer in the chat. Also, if any of these are your hometowns. We've got another dissenting opinion with the San Antonio, but moving from those AD dichotomy. All right, Pamela, show us what the answer is. It is D, Chattanooga, Tennessee. I may have given you a bit of a hint when I said that we will be hosting our conference Net Inclusion there in 2024. It's not just the aquarium that's bringing us to visit them. It's the fact that Chattanooga is gig city. It is the first US city to roll out that citywide fiber network, and they did it 12 years ago. I didn't even know what digital inclusion was 12 years ago. I don't even know quite if we had the term in the same way that we use it now. And best of all, since 2020, when all of the chaos that we're still living in started, they were able to provide that free high-speed Wi-Fi to all of the students who received free or reduced lunch. I'm so excited for going to Chattanooga in 2024 as well, because one of the issues that we deal with is ensuring that all of our participants in our traveling conferences are able to get online. And I'm not having to do any extra work when it comes to determining whether or not we're going to be able to have Wi-Fi and service that will be able to support all 600 digital inclusion practitioners just descending on that downtown. Don't even have to think about it. I'm so excited. And on the next page, I just want to share a few more of our resources with the Affordable Connectivity Program, which we are going to touch on in our policy section as well. But a quick little note on that. I know usually Sion gets a little bit deeper into that, so I won't touch too much on it, but here is the link, especially if you're watching through this in the recording. Don't worry, there'll be more. And I also want to share that we have a specific page that is curated by our staff, our free and low cost internet plans. So on the next slide, you can take a look at a little bit of a preview of that. This is created by our staff and supported by two very hardworking guys, one of whom actually has left for law school, but I do want to shout out Josh and Miles, and particularly Miles now for the work that he puts into maintaining this and connecting with all of these different internet service providers, ensuring that we have the most up-to-date information on ACP only plans, low cost plans with and without eligibility requirements. This is kept up to date as humanly possible, as fast as Miles can type. So take a look at this and utilize this as best you can when you're trying to find solutions for your communities and keeping everybody as connected as you can. Okay, that was a lot in the way of affordable and low cost broadband. So let's head over to the solution of appropriate and affordable devices. Again, a quick moment for that terminology, because on our first slide way back, I think we said appropriate devices. Once upon a time, we used to say affordable devices. But in many of our communities growing up, we have thought of affordable as maybe not so great. We have seen that affordable devices may not be serving our community members with the quality that they deserve, similar to having internet services that are not as affordable or as quality that we require at an affordable price. We also want to make sure that just because a device is affordable doesn't mean it's being shoved into the hands of a community member. We want that to be an appropriate device, the right device for the right decision and the right community member. So on the next slide, we'll take a look at kind of what makes a device appropriate. I know Pamela touched on this a little bit, but I think there is so many different ways in which we can think about the right device for the right project. We do always want to encourage the usage of these large screen devices. That's a great way of saying sort of like the tablet computer side of things, laptops, desktops, because those can do so many things. However, we acknowledge that our lives are not all the same. And sometimes the most appropriate device for someone may be that portable device and that smartphone. I will admit the amount of time I spend working from my smartphone because I am busy is a lot. It's portable. It has multiple connection items. I can get on the Wi-Fi. I can use my data plan. It does not replace my laptop, but it has a long enough battery that I can keep up on Slack messages when I'm on the train down to DC to hang out with Yvette and Sion sometimes. We also can think about all the ways in which a tablet can be beneficial. It's really fantastic for accessibility, for low vision community members who may want to use a Zoom feature, or for increasing size in an accessible way. Tablets also have a longer battery life than just a laptop. They can really go more places. They're easier to hold and easier to carry if that's a concern. One of the other great things about phones and tablets is if you are communicating with your family members and community members on WhatsApp using a keyboard that may not be the standard Latin one, you can download any keyboard you need to. It is so much easier to put the accent marks in all of the words when I am typing in Spanish, when I am using my phone or my tablet versus trying to do it with the shortcuts on Windows on my computer. But that being said, my laptop is mandatory for me to be able to do my job right here and now. I'm using it. I need it for the large amount of storage. I need it to be able to navigate the documents. It has a shorter battery life. It was not affordable, but it was the best decision for me being able to be a digital inclusion practitioner and get to engage with my community. Speaking of communities, I'd like to share one of our affiliates, Tech Goes Home, who provide digital skills trainings as well as computers and internet access for folks in Eastern Massachusetts. They are connecting folks with their appropriate device in the format of a Chromebook, 12 months of internet service, and helping to make sure that that device is appropriate and going home with community members to ensure that they are able to be connected to the world that they need to for the rest of their lives. For a little bit more on sort of these affordable devices and other details, on our next page, I'll share that we have a short chapter on this within our startup manual, and it helps you to think a little bit more about what your digital inclusion program may require, as well as some DIY tips on PC refurbishing and getting established with some of our refurbishers. We love that we can also be eco-friendly and keep computers within our communities using refurbishment to keep those costs low and that quality high. All right, it's been a lot, I know, but we're moving quickly because we're gonna head into digital skills training next. This is where everything gets a little bit more less technical, less hardware, and a little bit squishier. There is something that you may notice here that we are saying, and that is digital skills. We used to say digital literacy, and last year at our conference, we had a conversation about it, and a lot of our community members felt that digital literacy felt judgmental. It felt like a binary of are you or are you not digitally literate? So looking at these foundational digital skills, we can see that digital skills are really on a spectrum. I think every single one of us here in this room can work to improve our digital skills every day. We all have places where we need to grow and learn. Ask anybody who's asked me to do anything complicated in Google Sheets recently. That is a digital skill that I really need to up my power on. But thinking about some of these foundational digital skills, we can begin with, can you turn on the device? Do I know how the controls work? Can I interact with the home screen on my device? Can I connect to my device in a safe and secure Wi-Fi network? Do I know how to keep myself safe? As Pamela mentioned, so often pieces of digital skills and understanding our technology and our devices requires us to know how to keep ourselves safe and secure. If we pop to the next slide, we can take a look at some other digital skills training resources, including a blog post I just so happen to have written with some of my favorites. I know a lot of our communities are thinking about rolling out digital skills curriculums and really getting involved in the world of teaching and sharing. But the great news is there are folks who have been doing this for years and years, and we can really work from what they have already offered us and build off of their amazing resources, so that we're not trying to build something from scratch when we've already got a great recipe. One example of that is the Tech League. This is a program that we can take a look at and try modeling, where we are seeing community members receiving one-on-one assistance, upping their digital skills, working with tech mentors, specifically targeting community members who are refugee families settling in the Salt Lake City area. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can work with what we already have. Speaking of what we already have and things that we love, I want to share with you the Digital Navigators program. So our Digital Navigators are a fantastic example of what we can do when we come together as the NDIA community and say, what are we already doing? What is already working? And how do we make sure that everyone else gets to benefit from the work that we are doing together? So our digital navigators are consistently providing holistic and individualized support through repeat interactions. What does that mean? That means that they are the face, the emotions, and the voice of helping folks to access that affordable broadband, helping to connect them to the appropriate devices, and doing that hand-holding and connection through the digital skills training. They are assessing, evaluating, and supporting our community members. And I think most importantly, listening and offering a little bit more of that emotional support when it comes to technology. So many times when working with a community member during my time in public libraries, I would discover that the barrier was not so much the skills, but instead the emotional discomfort with the work that we were doing together. One fantastic example of digital navigators are our friends in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Digital Navigator cohort launched in 2020, so it was purely telephone run. They were offering support remotely, getting folks connected to internet, making sure that devices were getting into hands, providing digital skills and support, but they were targeting some specifically covered populations, including students, English language learners, and the disabled communities, making sure that the support that they were providing to these unique communities were from our communities, supporting each other rather than just trying to reach out into a world that we were not as familiar with. They also provided support within the languages our community members were comfortable speaking so that they were able to learn technology as well as have a strong emotional connection with their digital navigator. Great news is we have a lot of resources on digital navigators. On the next page, you can take a look at some of those. I definitely recommend just poking around into our digital navigator model. It is all available in open source. We have templates of our skills assessments. We have a baseline digital navigator description. There's even a toolkit. There's a webinar, and there will be more and more rolling out as Abby and I continue to refine and adapt all of the pieces of the digital navigator model based on what's working for all of y'all. So keep an eye out on the digital navigator side of things, because we will always have something fantastic and new to share. And now digital navigators are just a part of sort of the greater world of digital inclusion. And I'm going to hand it over to Pamela to talk more about what that world looks like and how we all work together.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again, Lo. All right. So what we kind of learned when we do these digital inclusion 101s is that oftentimes folks like you, digital inclusion practitioners, feel alone. Because this can be a very lonely work if your organization, you're the only digital inclusion practitioner there, or you don't see that there are other organizations in your community that kind of tackle all those other barriers that we talked about. You might feel like it has to be all on you. But what's really cool is that there is a digital inclusion ecosystem, and what that is, it's a combination of programs and policies that meet that community's unique and diverse needs. So that could be the library, as well as the state working on, or local government working on policies, as well as community resource centers or housing developments that are providing affordable connectivity or our devices for their tenants, things like that. And one important kind of pulse to a digital inclusion ecosystem is digital inclusion coalitions. So coalitions, they are a collective of community organizations that share the common concern of digital inclusion in their community. So this can, coalitions can be made up of local government, libraries, educational institutions, housing authorities, workforce development, tech companies, and social services and civic organizations. And so on the image on the right, it's a map of the coalitions that have registered themselves with NDIA. We are currently working on creating like a page where you can see all of the coalitions that exist that we know of, but I'm sure there's much more. And if you are part of a coalition that isn't on this map, please reach out to us. We would love to connect with you and learn from you, as well as have you be part of our community. So you see here, there are various local coalitions, and then we also have those big statewide coalitions as well. So these coalitions, they can raise funding for digital inclusion programs. They can raise awareness about the digital inequities that exist in their communities. They could also be collecting data in a form of having their community members fill out a speed test so that they can show, okay, look, this internet service provider is saying that this area is covered. We're actually hearing a different story, or the connection that they have is not meeting their needs, and it's actually quite low. And so this is an image from our previous coalition guidebook of just who is involved in these coalitions. And if you're one of these organizations and you saw your, a coalition on the map that you're at, definitely look at, reach out and see if you can be part of the coalition that exists near you. But yeah, we see workforce development, economic development, health, housing. Sometimes internet service providers are part of coalitions. It really just depends on that specific coalition and their comfortability with that specific internet service provider. Regional government, libraries are a big part of coalitions as well. So one example of a coalition is the Philadelphia Coalition Technology Learning Collaborative, TLC in Philly. So they are a volunteer-run collaborative providing professional development opportunities to the Philadelphia digital literacy community. And so what they do is they provide digital inclusion 101s, kind of like this one right here, as well as providing digital skills trainings and what digital inclusion could look like in their community. So they have over 300 members that they continually teach and educate on. And so another resource from us is our Digital Inclusion Coalition Guidebook, We launched this at the beginning of the year, so in February. And so in there is really good information about how coalitions are formed and structured, what are some key successful coalition operations. We also interviewed about 25 or 26 coalitions, so we learned best practices, lessons from the ground, and we compiled that for you. So here's a little snippet of what is inside the book. So if you want to learn more, you got to download it. I will put a link in the chat of where you can download that guidebook right there. And then the next resource we have for you is our Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. And so this is a public inventory of local government initiatives promoting digital literacy, broadband access for underserved residents. So this year, we actually named the largest group of trailblazers. We named 32 digital inclusion trailblazers. And as you can see here, we rank them in terms of the 6 different categories. So do they have a dedicated staff that's focusing on digital inclusion? Do they have a digital equity plan? Are they part of the Digital Inclusion Coalition there? Have they done some type of survey or research? Do they have funding for digital inclusion? And same thing with internet affordability. So if that is kind of alongside your work, feel free to utilize that. All of our resources are free. So passing it now to Sion. She'll introduce herself and then talk more about policy.
Thanks, Pamela. I am Sion Tesfaye. I am one of the members of the policy team here at NDIA. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the exciting policy developments this year, and even things that will take us into the new year.
Oh, Sia, you can go ahead.
I want to make sure Pamela, okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see this slide for some reason. Okay, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act established this historical investment in broadband and pretty notably in digital equity. For a long time, the discussion around broadband was dominated by kind of the infrastructure component. But as you listen to Pamela and Lo, it's more than just the physical access to broadband. The digital equity component is equally important. So it's about having access to skills and devices that you need to actually do things online. And with the Digital Equity Act, we are going to see states developed digital equity plans, which I'll talk more about in just a moment. Congress also recognized that broadband should be affordable and made a really strong investment in the Affordable Connectivity Program. And also in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was a section on digital discrimination, which this is Congress directing the FCC to really develop rules to prevent and eliminate digital discrimination. And the FCC has begun a rulemaking process to address this. And this process kind of involves the FCC asking the public questions like, how would you describe digital discrimination? Or, how should they evaluate or learn whether digital discrimination is taking place? And in this process, the FCC will adopt what's called a notice of proposed rulemaking. And this is a document that shows the public, here's some of the rules that we're proposing around this. Tell us a little bit what you think about them. And that document is going to be, there's a draft version right now that's available, but it'll be officially released to the public after the FCC adopts it. And then the public will have time to comment on it. And here at NDIA, we're going to be really focused on suggesting ideas to the FCC that encourage them to focus on, what the impact is of certain practices or policies that, are conducted by internet service providers that result in unequal access to, affordable, high quality broadband, whether they intended to do it or not. So those are sort of the really exciting policy developments in IIJA, and I'll use that acronym going forward. Just know that means the Infrastructure Act. And now I'll talk a little bit about the Digital Equity Act programs. So this is super exciting. What you see in this chart is just sort of like the flow of the funding. So NDIA stands for the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, and they are managing the Digital Equity Act programs. A good portion of this funding is going, directly to states. You can kind of think of it like as a block grant to states. And what you see first highlighted is the state planning grant program. And states are going to be using this funding to develop digital equity plans for the state. And the following, we'll know exactly soon when they will get into that next phase, but around a year-ish from now, states are also going to have money available to them to actually implement those plans. So that's what the capacity grant program is. And then a little later on, you'll see sort of that direct line from NDIA to the competitive grant program. And that's another program that will be available to certain eligible entities to advance digital equity in their communities. And then now I'll talk about another really important development, the Affordable Connectivity Program. Some of you may be familiar with it, but it's sort of, can think of it as like a continuation maybe of the emergency broadband benefit. And this program provides a $30 benefit to eligible households. And there's multiple ways a household can be eligible, which I'll show in just a second, but it also provides a device discount, right? So it's a recognition that devices are an important component of being able to access broadband. So who's eligible for ACP? Here's one way you can be eligible. Households whose income is at 200% or less of the federal poverty level. This level is updated. You'll see the dollar amounts associated with household size. These numbers are as of July of this year. There might be some small variation in that level of income. You'll see, as you look at it, I think it's updated on a quarterly basis, but yeah, there is guidance so that you can sort of go in and look to see how your household income matches with the income level threshold that's set for the Affordable Connectivity Program. But this is just one way. There's a few other ways I'll talk about. Okay, so if a household participates in certain federal assistance programs, that's another avenue to becoming eligible for ACP. So you see there's a variety of them as well. And I think maybe what I failed to articulate, even though it was on the slide, is that there is, for eligible households on qualifying tribal lands, that benefit is going to be a little greater. It's going to be $75. Okay, so we have all this money for the Affordable Connectivity Program. There's a need to make sure people understand that this is a benefit that they can use. So the FCC was given authority in IIJA to develop an outreach grant program, and they've done so, and the application window is open for that. So I'll talk now a little bit about what this program is, some entities that might be, or not might be, some entities that are eligible for it, and what the goal of the program is. Okay, so this is really about increasing awareness and participation in ACP. And the top line objectives are to support diverse and impactful outreach and strengthen outreach partners. So the FCC has recognized that trusted community organizations are really the right messengers for ACP. Sometimes with government benefits, if something is advertised for free or low cost, maybe it doesn't sound, believable. or maybe there's some real confusion about like, am I actually eligible for this? How do I even sign up for it? So the outreach grant program was really intended to provide a lot of support for organizations that, for example, already have really strong connections with communities that would, likely be eligible for the program. Okay, so there are sort of, in federal government, we call a lot of things programs. So I said the Affordable Connectivity Outreach Grant Program, and then we have the National Competitive and Tribal Competitive Outreach Grant Program. They're just, you can think of them as sub-programs of the outreach program. And this is where the bulk of the outreach funding is. So there's the National Competitive Outreach Grant Program, again, intended to increase awareness and encourage participation in ACP. This is just a quick snapshot of the funding breakdown. It's important to the FCC that some of the grants are dispersed among all of the states where grantees apply. So there's sort of a target minimum, meaning that the FCC has a goal of making sure that there's a minimum of 500,000 dispersed to each state that seeks fund, right? So it's not an allotment. If you want funding, you have to apply and compete with others. But some of this money that you see from the 60 million is reserved to at least make sure that there's funding available for each state that has people who want to apply for that grant funding. The Tribal Competitive Outreach Grant Program, 10 million allotted to that. And the big difference is it's, a lot of the eligible and all of the eligible entities that are eligible for the National Competitive Outreach Grant Program are eligible for the Tribal Competitive Program, but that funding has to really go to encourage participation and enrollment among households on tribal lands. Okay, so eligibility, who can apply for this? So it's both government and non-government entities you see here. So quite the variety. So local government, state governments, but also community-based organizations, nonprofits, community anchor institutions, quite a bit of organizations eligible to apply for this. There is a much more detailed explanation of everything that I'm talking about in what's called a Notice of Funding Opportunity that's released by the FCC. We have a link that'll link you to the FCC's outreach grant page, where it's just a hub of information. So it's got all of the information about eligibility, information about office hours, webinars, fact sheets. So all of the things that you can reference to learn about this. Okay, so we have resources too. On our page or through these links, you'll see sort of an explanation of the Digital Equity Act programs that I referenced first, what ACP is and some resources for that. Some of the blog posts that we tried to break things down in plain language in case there's anything that that still seems kind of confusing about what some of these programs are. And I'll put a plug in for a working group that we hold regularly on ACP for people who are interested in the program or work closely with communities that could benefit from it. And we kind of talk through some of the successes, but also some of the challenges, and are really there just kind of as support for each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sion. And shout out to Gina for answering the questions in the chat. All right, so we just got 2 slides left. This is our plug to join the NDIA community. It is free if you join as a friend or register your organization as an affiliate. Joining as an affiliate, you're able to access our NDIA listserv, which has a lot of thriving conversations on there about what is working, what isn't working. People will ask for advice of what's going on in their state, or about any digital literacy programs that exist out there. Our community really loves to help each other out. We also have those monthly community calls. Again, our next community call is going to be tomorrow. So I will put a link in the chat of when you can register for that. So we would love for you to all join us tomorrow. And then you also get access to our monthly newsletter. And then I also want to put a plug for Net Inclusion 2023. It's going to be in San Antonio from February 28th to March 2nd. And we're going to have a lot of really great topics there. For example, local government funding, partnering with internet service providers, what type of data to collect and when. You could actually watch all of the recordings of our previous Net Inclusion that was during this year in Portland in the link that I just put. And then to register for Net Inclusion, go ahead and check the link that I just put there as well. All right, so we're 1 minute over. I believe that all of the questions in the chat got answered by Gina. So thank you so much, Gina. If there are any questions, we could spend maybe a minute or two there. But if not, thank you all for joining us. The slides and the recordings will be sent out via email by the end of the day today. So you'll have access to all of these goodies. And also this is our contact information. So you can contact me, Lo, or Sian if you have any specific questions about what we covered today. All right, well, it looks like there's no questions in the chat. I will go ahead and end this training. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Join us for the community call tomorrow. All right, bye everyone.